We're going to start the lymph system. If I can shorten this. Oh, well. Lymph system, let's just go right through the process. Lymph system is its main function is for fluid recovery. As your blood is passing through the blood is under pressure in the arteries, and it gets to the capillaries. Those are small tubes, and what happens is the liquid portion, the plasma, is squeezed out of the blood into the surrounding tissue. And when it does that, it loses pressure. So that's what's going on with the first portion, is the liquid and anything dissolved in it gets into the tissues. Now, without any way to drain this, that fluid would sit in your tissues and build up, and we call that edema, and that's the swelling of it. So the lymph system is to remove that fluid so we don't have fluid building up. It's also part of our immunity system. It again, as the fluid is passing through the tissues, they pick up bacteria, viruses, particles of damaged cells, anything like that, any foreign substance also. And what happens is, because the lymph system is similar to the circulatory system. So this fluid collects in these ducts, is on its way back. It'll eventually get back into the circulatory system, but as it goes, it passes through the lymph nodes, and those kind of act like a filter that collect all this debris, the bacteria, and so forth. Now the nodes are full of immune cells, and this is how they prevent infections or how they get exposed to foreign antigens. And so again, right here, it's guards against infection. Another portion of this is with the small intestine. There's some special vessels there, that they call lacteals. And these absorb dietary fats. It's kind of a milky substance, and that brings it into the lymph system, which again goes back to will eventually get into the circulatory system where it can be carried out to the other tissues. All right, the lymph system consists of lymph, which is the fluid, the vessels, which are going to carry the fluid, tissues, and organs. All right, so again, right up here, the lymph is the fluid in the spaces between the tissues. Very similar to plasma, but it's got less proteins in it. We'll cover that again later. You have the vessels that are going to, again, carrying the lymph, like it does blood, back to the blood. You have lymphatic tissues where you have clumps of lymphocytes and macrophages. The best example for this would be like your tonsils. We have lots of lymphocytes and macrophages there. So as things are exposed, as we take stuff into our mouth, they're exposed there and can protect us from infection or prime our immune system even with it. And then we have other lymph organs, like the bone marrow, which is where where blood cells are made, thymus, spleen, and lymph nodes. How this works is the circulatory here system is under pressure. It's got high pressure, so we can put a little up arrow for high pressure. And when it reaches the capillaries, the fluid is squeezed out of it. And that's what they're showing you over here in this kind of purplish range. Let me change the color. In this purplish range right through here, it's really small, so the fluid is squeezed out. And what happens is this fluid then, they're showing you with these arrows, goes back, is picked up into these lymph ducts, which is an open system. Because the circulatory system is closed. It comes through, the blood just goes right on through and around and comes right back and just keeps going. On the lymph system, it's open. It picks it up from the tissues. You see it right here. And it'll flow up and gets more and more, and it goes through the lymph nodes, as they're showing you with the arrows, gets filtered in the lymph nodes, and gets exposed, your immune system gets exposed to anything that might be in there. And eventually it gets dumped back into the blood system, into the circulatory system, excuse me, up above the heart in the subclavian arteries, or excuse me, subclavian veins. All right, so what is lymph? Lymph is a clear, colorless fluid, all right, very similar to the blood plasma, but it has less protein in it, okay? It picks, again, what does the lymph do? It picks up all these substances that are in the interstitial, which means the space between the tissues, between the cells. It'll pick up some chemicals, bacteria, dirt, anything that's going on in there. All right, so as again, it's made up of the fluid that leaves the blood, right here, leaving the blood vessels, and enters the interstitial space. It'll flow through the lymph nodes, which kind of filter it and expose our immune system to it, so our immune system can be primed to protect us. Eventually, it does get returned to the circulatory system. There's a special one called chyle. This is the one with the lacteals in that small intestine. It's got a lot of fat into it, so it has kind of a milky appearance. So think of like milk, you think of lactose or lactose intox. So lact means milk, and it has that appearance. That's why it's called lacteals. Your lymphatic vessels, just like your blood vessels, these are various ones. You have your terminal ones, which are your small ones. These are everywhere. These are out throughout the tissue, so they're going to be small, letting the fluid come in. As just like a tributary is on a river, you have small tributary creeks that flow into a river, and they get bigger and bigger. Same thing. So you have your lymphatic capillaries, just like blood. They collect into larger vessels. Okay, again, like a river or your veins. And then they end up with larger and larger ones until we end up with where it's dumping back into the circulatory system. And that'll occur in the right lymphatic duct and the thoracic duct. And again, both of these occur in the subclavian vein. One's on one side of the body, the other's on the other side of the body. The lymph system is not divided up evenly. All right, the right system comes right up through here, and if the head was turned, it would actually be better, because I'm going to draw it like this, because the face is actually part of the left side. The top of the head and the back of the head is on the right side. So it's not evenly divided. They do, and you have your right lymphatic duct, which is right there where the left subclavian and the jugular come together in that region. And then you have it on the right side, the same, the left side, the same way. The left subclavian and the left jugular come together. There's right there that gets dumped back into the circulatory system, where to go in through the heart and then transmit throughout the body again. But notice that there are the lymph ducts all over through the body, because we have capillaries everywhere. So that lymph is that fluid is the aqueous, the watery type stuff is leaving the blood. Gets into the tissue. At that point, we call it we call it interstitial fluid at that point. And then once it collects into the ducts and starts moving back up from wherever it deposited, we call it lymph. And it will filter through lymph nodes. We have lymph nodes all over the place. Here's a bunch of them. Here's a group. Right through here, those lacteals, because there's the small intestine. You have some in the armpit region, which we call axillary. The axillary nodes are near the surface, so you can actually feel those. The inguinal ones here, these are near the surface also. Most of you have probably heard of the bubonic plague, medieval times. Actually, it's not medieval times, but it's several hundred years ago. Black Death. And when those inguinal nodes, they're infected with the bubonic plague, these inguinal nodes would swell up and would produce what they call buboes, which are swellings, hence the name bubonic plague. That's where they got the name from. We have lots of lymph nodes up in our throat. So if you've ever gone to the doctor or you've ever had a parent kind of feel your throat to see if your lymph nodes are swollen, that's what they're talking about. Because as the bacteria, debris, any foreign material goes through there, they can kind of get clogged up a little bit if there's a lot of it going through. So they swell, the fluid backs up a little bit, causes that swelling, and they're feeling for that. And that kind of helps them know approximately where it might be at. It gives them a general direction with some kind of medical professional, whether it's coming from your head, your arm, your legs, or wherever the infection might be. All right, so the lymph node itself, it's made of a stroma. It's got a stroma portion that includes the capsule, reticular tissue, and trabeculae. We'll see that in the next slide coming up. It has a cortex. Remember, cortex is always the outer region. Medulla means middle, so we're always talking about the middle area. And then it has, just like with our nerves, we have afferent and efferent nerves. We have, afferent and efferent vessels on the lymph nodes themselves. So on here, that stroma is actually this outer portion, the which includes the trabeculae right here, these indentations right here. You see them? And then the right along the edge of those trabeculae. Okay. Now the cortex itself, let me change some color so we can see a little better. Let's go with blue. The cortex itself is all of the entire outer region. Coming down here like near the bottom of those trabeculae. So this blue highlighted region would be the cortex, which includes some of these portions right here, the lymphoid follicle, germinal center, subscapular sinus. And then the medulla, which includes the medullary cord, medullary sinus, is this inner portion right through here that stains lighter. The cortex out here, you see these kind of triangle shaped regions, those stain darker. And the inner portion here, the medulla, stains a little bit lighter when you're looking at it. Notice you have the afferent because it's bringing the fluid in. So these would be your afferent region vessels. And if it takes it away, that would be the efferent. And the efferent's going to be into this middle portion of it here. It kind of looks like a kidney in a way. And so the efferent is we're taking the fluid away from it. Some other tissues, you have your red bone marrow. If you remember back when we did the skeletal system, this is where blood is formed. We talked about when we did blood. And most of our immune cells are actually produced here. Okay, they might mature other places, but most of them are produced right here. The thymus, which is very small in adults, is where we have our T cells mature here. Hence, since they mature in the thymus, we call them T cells for thymus. And there is a little barrier at the thymus that separates the blood from it, so that the blood is not, as they're maturing at this point, they're not exposed to any bloodborne antigens, but they do later on in the lymph nodes and other places. Our tonsils are lymph organs, all right, located in the back of the throat. They have pits in them called the tonsillar crypts, which have the immune cells lining them, so that when we get debris caught into it, those immune cells can be present there, get exposed to it, so we can take information. They get educated basically, and then they can teach other cells what to look for so that we can fight off infections. And so really what they're looking for is ingested or inhaled antigens, because as we breathe in or we eat something, the antigen is a foreign protein. And again, so we can produce an immune response is what this is for. The spleen is the largest one. There has a parenchyma or a parenchyma. This is the red pulp because it's got a lot of red blood cells in it, and has white pulp because it has a lot of lymphocytes, which are going to clean up dead blood cells or anything else that's being filtered out of the blood through this portion. The main function of this is an erythrocyte or red blood cell graveyard. Again, because it is filtering the blood, we are going to find bacteria that's in the blood and cellular debris in the blood. And just like if you're at the tonsils, this can produce an immune response by finding antigens that are in this blood. All right, so there's lots of places for our immune system to be exposed to the antigens, and that is because of our lymph system. So our lymph system is very important and very closely related to our immune system. That's the end of this lecture. Have a nice day.